check the historic record, the majority, the vast majority, without an exception, of the foremost Islamic scholars in every generation have been following the methodology of al-Ash'ira wal-Maturidiyya. I said, no doubt. And if you read, and here's with us, I have to, in a way, speak about some things that might make some uncomfortable, but listen, get used to it, right? There is a level of racism in all this, right? And a level of false sense of superiority that exists. And it has its play in how they look at people sometimes. It's not expected for a black African American to be a hardcore Sunni. That's not expected. That's not normal. He's an African American, not African, an African American. And he's a Sunni, 100% in Aqidah, in fiqh, in tasawwuf, has chains of transmission, has learned. That's not normal. And so whoever is like that is an oddball in the midst of the stuff we have today. Usually, the African American is expected to have some deviant idea in Islam. So we was Nation or Ansars or Moorish Science Temple. And now Wahhabi, so-called Salafi, so-called Athari, so-called Hanbali. Listen, those ideas that they push under those names have always been known in our ummah as heretical ideas. Always. But they've become popular. And usually, where all of the nonsense gets dumped is in the African American community. So in the suburbs, you have a bunch of Ash'ira and Maturidiyya, people follow madhabs, Sufis. It is in the inner city where black people are predominant, African Americans, where there is a gap of access. And since there's a gap in access, there's a gap in knowledge. And that's by design. That is by design. So let's not take that off the table. We don't need to concentrate on it, but we ain't taking that off the table. Because of that activity, it becomes normal in the black community for us to have deviant ideas. And with the moving of wealth and the lack thereof inside the inner cities, it's easier to promote deviant and heretical ideas. And I'm saying that. So my challenge is always, like when we're dealing with things, that sometimes we got to look at multiple ways, right? Some things you don't want to deal with, but they true, right? You might not like it, but yo, this is true. And I know it. And I'll give you an example. You would have people talking about these issues, and they dominate the airwaves, and you'll never see an African American in that discussion. They're talking about Ash'aris and Hanbalis and Athari Creed, and you never see a black man. You ever ask why? You never see an African American on that table at that. It's a straight, be nice. It's a straight coloring that doesn't involve certain colors. Pay attention. Pay attention. As if no African African Americans studied and could deal with that subject. And we collectively have been having Islam way before any of them in America. We've had to push towards Islam in our communities before they even accepted it. For 30 years or more, and it's more than that, but for 30 hardcore years, you've been dominating the airways with things that contradict the belief and practice of the majority of the Muslim nation, both globally and historically. And now, when there's a resurgence, because it never went nowhere, and as soon as it was always here. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the hands of people with a voice and some courage. It was in protected areas among us as a people, and we just do our stuff, but we're not mixing with the African Americans. We're not trying to educate them. So what happened? There was the flowing of bad ideas, and those bad ideas became the norm because no access to scholarship. No access to chains of narration. No access to books and commentaries in its original form. No access. So if you don't have access, what are you left with? You're left with whatever they give you. We know that from the Western education system, right? So the Ash'ari creed now in our communities is getting well known. I remember it 30 years ago, you would never hear as a norm Ash'ari in none of our communities. 30 years, 25, it has only been in the last 20-some years with certain work, and a lot of that came from the East Coast, where we were on ground zero with the hardcore ideas of the Wahhabis. Listen, I said Wahhabi. I don't mean it that I hate individuals, but that creed, we had to deal with it. And we've been dealing with it on ground zero in its worst form. My suburban brothers and sisters, from other than the black community, your Salafism, the Wahhabism that you face is not the same that we face in the inner cities. We have the hardcore extreme version of Wahhabiyya, so-called Salafiyya. We're dealing with the hardest version of that. So we're not the same. We are confronted with the most severe version of it in our communities. And I want to add, we're with the most severe version with people who have been given the worst form of education in this society, the black community. Education, forget Islam, just regular education has been the worst in the black community. There's a serious disparity in education and access to quality education versus suburban communities and the black community, which is in the inner city, versus white people, other people, and black people. There's been a vast difference. And in Islam, it's the same, if not worse. So you take a deviant doctrine and give it to the most uneducated group of people in terms of access, not in terms of intellectual ability. We smart, but if you don't give us access, we only got what you give us. And you put that, and that's what we were faced with. Do y'all understand the dynamics of that? So sometimes you be like, why they always talk us? Because we didn't have the luxury of being alone by ourselves, away from all these things. We right in the heat of it, in the thick of it. With all of their rhetoric and doctrines and ideas pointed directly at us. Right? Our masjids, our elders, directly, right? Do you understand? So don't expect me to act like you. I'm under fire. You not. We're actually being attacked. You're not. So don't expect us to. And don't you try to use your platform to make our reality. It ain't the same. And somebody need to put you in your place. Say, oh, brakes. No. We're not the same. We're not confronted with the same condition. So you can't speak for us. You are a criminal for trying to speak for us. You know nothing about us.